I never thought a whisper could carry the weight of 1,000 screams. It was my daughter's wedding day, the day every father dreams of. She stood there, radiant in her white dress, her eyes sparkling with the kind of joy I hadn't seen since she was a little girl running through sprinklers in our backyard. I was proud, nervous, a bit emotional, sure, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. As the pastor raised his hands to begin the vows, he leaned ever so slightly toward me. He didn't look at me, didn't blink. He just whispered, calm and cold, "The groom is your son." Then, like he had just said something about the weather, he closed his Bible and stepped back. My body froze. My breath hitched. The world around me blurred. My mind went completely blank, then flooded with questions I didn't even know how to ask. How could that be possible? What did he mean, my son? I only have one child, don't I? My daughter was smiling. The groom looked at her like she was his entire world. The guests were all watching, unaware that in that moment, the ground beneath me had opened up. I wasn't just confused. I was terrified. No one else heard what the pastor said. No one else saw me unraveling. But inside me, something shattered. Was this some cruel joke? A mistake? Or the truth unraveling at the worst possible moment? This wasn't just a wedding. This was the collapse of everything I thought I knew about my life. And if you think that's the end of the story, it's not even the beginning. To understand how I ended up sitting in a church, moments away from possibly witnessing my daughter marry her brother, you have to understand where I come from, and who I used to be. I wasn't always the man people see today. There was a time I made a lot of mistakes. I grew up in a small town, where secrets got buried deeper than graves, and forgiveness was a currency few could afford. My early 20s were messy, wild, selfish, and full of regret. Before I met my wife, the woman I built my life with, the mother of my daughter, I had a different life. A string of short relationships, one-night stands, things I never thought would come back to haunt me. I wasn't proud of it, but I told myself back then, as long as I move on, it doesn't matter. Then I met Carla. She changed everything. She was smart, grounded, full of light. She made me want to be better. We got married quickly, and not long after, she gave birth to our daughter, Ava. Ava was everything to me. My reason to wake up. My second chance at life. I worked hard, built a career, saved money. We were a tight-knit family, the kind that ate dinner together, took road trips, decorated the house for every holiday. If there were any secrets in our home, I wasn't aware of them. But life has a cruel way of revealing things you thought were buried forever. I remember one night, maybe 15 years ago, Carla asked me a strange question. We had just put Ava to bed, and we were cleaning up after dinner. She turned to me and said, "Do you ever think about your past? About whether something might come back?" I laughed it off, said something like, "No one from back then would even remember my name." But her face stayed serious. I asked why she was bringing it up, and she said, "No reason, just wondering." I should have known then that something was off. But life was good, steady, predictable. Ava grew up with love, support, and every opportunity we could give her. She was bright, kind, the kind of kid who hugged her teachers, made friends with the shy kids at school, and brought home stray animals like it was a job. And when she turned 16, she met Luke. Luke was polite, quiet, well-spoken. He came from a rougher background, foster care, bouncing from one home to another, but he carried himself with a strange maturity. Something about him felt familiar. At first, I was skeptical, protective. That's just what dads do. But over time, Luke proved himself. He treated Ava with respect, worked 2 part-time jobs while finishing school, and always called me, "Sir." I began to like him, even admire him. I didn't know then what I was looking at. Didn't know I was watching a secret inch its way back into the light. There was one moment, just one, that stuck with me. It was the first time Luke came over for dinner. We were sitting at the table, and I asked him casually, "Where did you grow up?" He said he didn't really know, that his birth records were spotty, and he bounced around a lot. Carla went pale. She dropped her fork, blamed it on being tired. Again, I ignored it. Why? Because that's what we do when the truth feels too dangerous. We bury it. I thought maybe she just felt sorry for the boy. Maybe his past reminded her of someone she once knew. But now, I'm not so sure. Now, as I sat in that church, reeling from what the pastor had whispered. Every little red flag I ignored came rushing back like a tidal wave. The night Carla asked about the past, the way she looked when Luke mentioned his childhood, even the strange tension between her and the pastor, something I hadn't noticed until that very moment. The truth didn't explode. It unfolded, slow and suffocating, and for the first time in my life, I realized I might not be the man I thought I was. Luke always carried a kind of sadness in his eyes. He smiled easily, laughed at my jokes, helped Carla with dishes after dinner, but behind his politeness, there was a stillness, like he was always holding something back. I used to think it was just from growing up in foster care. That kind of life leaves scars, even if you never see them. He didn't talk much about his childhood, said he bounced between homes in different cities, a few group facilities, and a couple of, almost families, that didn't work out. He never complained though, never acted bitter. If anything, he was grateful, for Ava, for our home, for the small things. But sometimes, he'd say things that didn't quite add up. Like the time he mentioned he remembered seeing me once, years ago, in a coffee shop on the other side of town. "I think you were with someone," he said casually. "A long time ago. I was maybe 8. I laughed it off, thinking he was mistaken. But now, I remember that moment. The way he looked at me, like he was trying to confirm something. I never thought to ask more questions. Never thought to pry into someone's pain. That was Carla's job, the gentle one, the nurturer. She used to sit with Luke when he came over, ask him questions in that warm tone of hers. I thought she was just being kind. Now I wonder what she really knew. There was a time, about a year before the wedding, when Ava got really sick. Nothing serious, but enough to put her in the hospital for a couple days. Luke never left her side. He slept in the uncomfortable chair next to her bed, read her books, brought her favorite snacks. Nurses would come in and smile. One of them even said, "He's going to be a great husband." And he would have been. He still might be. That's the part that kills me, because even if he is my son, even if what the pastor whispered is true, how do I erase the years of love between them? How do I look at Luke, the boy who held Ava's hand through pain, who called me Dad once by accident, and tell him he doesn't belong? I started thinking about the timeline, doing mental math, counting back years I tried to forget. There was a girl. Her name was Stephanie. We had a brief thing. No commitments, no follow-up. Just one of those reckless moments in a life full of them. I never heard from her again. Never even knew her last name. But Luke once mentioned that he was born in early spring, around the time that relationship ended. That night, I dug through old drawers, boxes in the attic. I found nothing. No photos, no names, no evidence. Just fragments of a life I tried to leave behind. And I realized something. I never looked too closely at Luke, not because I didn't care, but because deep down, some part of me already knew, already feared this very possibility. He was too familiar. The curve of his jaw, the way he clenched his fists when he was nervous, even the way he laughed when he was caught off guard, it was all too close, too much like me. And I think Carla knew too. Maybe not at first, maybe it took time, but she saw it. And instead of confronting me, or Luke, or anyone, she just carried it, alone, until the day of the wedding, when it could no longer be hidden. The morning of the wedding felt like something out of a dream. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. Carla was bustling around, triple-checking the catering order, making sure Ava's bouquet was still fresh in the fridge. Ava was upstairs, laughing with her bridesmaids, and I was just trying to stay out of the way, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching my wife float around like she was holding the whole world together with pins and tape. Everything looked perfect, but underneath that calm surface, something felt off. It's hard to explain. Like the air was too still. Like everyone was trying too hard to act normal. Carla barely made eye contact with me that morning. I chalked it up to nerves. I mean, our little girl was getting married. That's emotional for any parent, right? Luke arrived around 10 a.m., early enough to help set up chairs and take a few pre-ceremony photos. He looked sharp. Tailored navy suit, clean shave, nervous smile. I pulled him aside, clapped a hand on his shoulder and said, "You ready for this?" He nodded. "More than anything, sir." I should have noticed how shaky his voice was, how tight his jaw looked. But there were distractions. Guests arriving, the photographer asking for group shots, my brother complaining about parking, Everything was moving too fast. The venue was a small church just outside town, the same one Carla and I were married in. That place held memories, good ones, sacred ones. I never imagined it would become the scene of something so devastating. I watched Ava walk down the aisle with tears in my eyes. She looked like her mother on our wedding day, maybe even more beautiful. Luke's eyes locked onto hers, and for a second, I forgot everything. Forgot the unease. Forgot the whisper from my past. All I saw were two people in love. But then I noticed something strange. The pastor, a close friend of Carla's from her college days, kept glancing at me during the ceremony. Not at the couple, not at the crowd, at me. His expression was tight, like he was carrying something unbearable. He took a deep breath and began his speech, the usual talk about love, commitment, unity. Then he paused, just a second too long, and that's when it happened. He leaned toward me, hand still holding the Bible, and said the words that tore my world in half. "The groom is your son." Then, without another word, he stepped back, closed the book, continued like nothing had happened. I didn't move, couldn't speak. My ears were ringing, and everything slowed down. The music, the guests, even the birds outside seemed to vanish into silence. I looked at Carla. Her face was pale, lips trembling. She wouldn't meet my eyes. And Luke? He looked tense, not confused, not surprised, just tense, like he knew what had been said, and was bracing for what might come next. The weight of those words settled into my chest like concrete. I thought about Luke's childhood, his vague answers, the girl from my past. I thought about Carla's late-night talks with the pastor, the time she cried in the shower, the way she'd flinch when Luke smiled too much like me. It all connected, horribly, perfectly. I wasn't watching my daughter get married. I was standing in the middle of a lie so massive, it had waited years to destroy everything. "The groom is your son." 6 words. Just 6 words. And yet, they broke something in me I didn't know could break. At first, I thought I had misheard. That maybe the pastor had said something else, something far less horrifying. I wanted to turn to him and ask, "What did you say?" But my body wouldn't move. My mouth wouldn't open. I sat there, frozen in place, staring straight ahead while the rest of the ceremony moved like a dream around me. Ava didn't notice. She was smiling, radiant, glowing in a way that only a woman in love does. Luke looked calm, but if you really paid attention, like I was now, you'd see it. His hands were shaking slightly, his jaw clenched too tight. He wasn't nervous because of the wedding. He was bracing for something. I looked again at Carla. She wasn't looking at anyone. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. Her fingers were twisting her wedding band around and around. I realized then, she already knew. I kept asking myself, how? How could this happen? How could no one say anything? And worse, how could I not know? I didn't even hear most of the vows. They sounded like muffled noise underwater. My heart was pounding too loudly in my ears. I was staring at Luke now, studying him like a detective trying to solve a case seconds before it explodes. His nose, my nose, his voice, my voice, his posture, his temper, his loyalty, all of it, mine. The room got hotter. My throat dried out. I reached up to loosen my tie, but stopped halfway, afraid even that movement would unravel me. I thought about the years, the time Luke and Ava spent together, every anniversary, every holiday, the times I joked about him being like a son to me. And now he might actually be. The pastor continued like nothing had happened, but every sentence felt like a mockery now. "Marriage is about truth," he said. "It's about honesty." I almost laughed. What truth? What honesty? This was a ceremony built on lies. I remembered a time, maybe a year ago, when Luke pulled me aside after helping me fix a broken fence post in the backyard. He looked serious, nervous even, and he said, "Can I ask you something weird?" I told him sure, go ahead. He paused, looked me dead in the eyes, and asked, "Do you think people are born knowing who they are, or do they find out too late?" I brushed it off as one of those philosophical questions young people ask when they're trying to sound deep. But maybe that was his way of asking. Maybe he already knew. Maybe he'd been carrying this weight on his shoulders alone, waiting for someone, anyone, to confirm it. The ceremony ended. Everyone clapped. Ava and Luke kissed, and the music played. People stood up, smiled, took pictures, and I just sat there, still, silent, drenched in something colder than fear. I looked up at the pastor. He met my eyes again, but there was no guilt, no apology, no panic, just resolution, like he had done what he came to do. And I knew then. He told me because no one else would. Not Carla, not Luke, not Ava, though I prayed she didn't know. He told me because secrets this big don't stay buried forever. And now that it was out, the question wasn't whether it was true. The question was what I was going to do about it. I left the church before the reception began. No explanation, no goodbyes, just walked out, past the rows of smiling guests, through the oak doors, and into the late afternoon heat. I couldn't breathe. I needed space, air, time to think without hearing wedding bells echoing in my skull. I drove aimlessly for almost an hour, barely seeing the road. My hands gripped the wheel like I was trying to keep my entire life from veering off a cliff. Eventually, I pulled over at a gas station, sat in the parking lot, and just stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Was this who I was now? A man who'd lived a lie so big, he didn't even know it was a lie? The words kept replaying in my mind. The groom is your son. Every time I repeated them, they sounded worse. He wasn't just some kid marrying my daughter. He might be my blood, my flesh, my past, reappearing in the most horrifying way. And yet, I couldn't dismiss it, because the moment the pastor said it, I felt it. I knew. Not in the way you know a fact, but in the way your bones recognize a storm before it hits. Something inside me had always been uneasy, always suspicious. And now that the words had been spoken, the dam had broken. I began to piece it all together, not just what happened at the wedding, but years before. There was a woman, Stephanie. I met her when I was barely 22. She worked at a diner I used to go to after my night shifts. We weren't serious. We were two young people with time to kill. It lasted a few weeks, maybe 2 months, and then it ended the way most things did in my early life, without ceremony or closure. She moved suddenly. No forwarding address. I never thought about her again. But now, sitting in that gas station, I could remember things I hadn't thought about in decades. Her middle name. The way she used to rub the scar on her wrist when she was nervous. The cigarette burns on her car's dashboard. And one night, the last time I saw her, she cried. She didn't tell me why. Just said, "You'll be fine. You always walk away clean." I never asked what she meant. I just left. If Luke is her son, if he was born around that time, then this was my fault. All of it. I drove back home, heart thudding like a war drum in my chest. Carla was there, waiting. She didn't look surprised to see me. Didn't look relieved either. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one we'd sat at for years. Birthday parties, Christmas breakfasts, quiet Monday dinners. Only now, it felt like enemy territory. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just asked her one question. "Is he mine?" She closed her eyes and nodded, slowly, silently. And in that moment, I felt something break between us that could never be put back together. She told me the truth, or at least, her version of it. Years ago, she got a phone call from Stephanie, out of the blue. She said she had a son, said the timeline matched, said she didn't want anything, just wanted Carla to know. Carla didn't tell me. She said she was scared, said she didn't want to blow up our life. She thought if she said nothing, maybe it would pass. Maybe the boy would grow up far away, and we'd never hear from him again. But fate doesn't work that way. Luke came into Ava's life by chance, or maybe not. Maybe it was some cosmic force, trying to pull the truth into the light. Carla recognized him immediately. She saw the resemblance, heard it in his laugh. She was terrified. But by then, Ava was already falling in love, so she stayed quiet. I asked her why the pastor said something at the wedding. She told me she had confessed it to him 2 weeks earlier, broken, terrified, unsure what to do. She never imagined he'd actually say it out loud. "He thought you deserved to know," she said. And he was right. I sat in silence for a long time, trying to figure out what hurt more, the truth itself, or the fact that it had been hidden from me for so long. I kept thinking about Luke, about the moments we shared, fixing the car, coaching Ava's soccer games, building that stupid bookshelf. I had always felt something for him, like he was family. Now I knew why. But what does a man do with that knowledge? Do I break my daughter's heart? Do I destroy the only good relationship Luke has ever had? Or do I pretend it never happened, and live with the weight of it forever? There was no guidebook for this, no roadmap, no priest, no counselor, no friend could help me make this right. I was a father, twice over, apparently, and somehow I had to choose which child I was willing to hurt, or whether it was already too late to protect either of them. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside Carla, both of us staring at opposite walls, silent. The space between us felt like a canyon. Her breathing was shallow. I could hear her trying not to cry, trying not to let the silence crack into something worse. I got up before the sun rose, made coffee I didn't drink, sat at the table and stared at the front door, knowing what I had to do. Luke deserved to know, not just the whisper, the truth, everything. I called him. He answered on the second ring, voice rough from sleep. "Hey, sir! Everything okay?" My throat tightened at that word, sir. If he had known, he wouldn't be calling me that. I asked if we could meet, just the two of us. No Ava, no Carla. We met at the park near the house, the one with the old swing set and the cracked basketball court. It was quiet, empty, appropriate. When he saw me, he smiled like nothing had happened. I almost couldn't believe it. He walked up and said, "Didn't expect to see you today. You vanished after the ceremony." I nodded, then told him to sit. I didn't know where to begin. There's no blueprint for telling someone they might be your son, especially when you just married your daughter. So I didn't ease into it. I just said it. "Luke, do you know who your father is?" He blinked, confused. "No. I mean, not really. I was in and out of homes. I was told he left before I was born. Never asked questions." I nodded slowly. "Your mother's name? Was it Stephanie?" He froze. His face went pale. "Yeah. How do you?" And that's when it hit him. I watched it happen, his face shifting from confusion to horror in real time. The puzzle pieces snapping into place all at once. His jaw slackened. His hands curled into fists. "Are you saying—" he started, but couldn't finish. I nodded. "It's possible." "More than possible." He stumbled backward, like I had punched him. "No, that can't be true. You're saying Ava and we're—" I looked down. I couldn't say it, couldn't confirm it out loud. He sat down on the bench, head in his hands, silent for what felt like forever. "I didn't know," I said quietly, "until yesterday. The pastor, he told me just before the vows." Luke let out a bitter laugh. "The pastor, of course," Carla told him, "didn't she?" I nodded again. He looked at me, eyes red now. "Why didn't she say anything to me? To us?" I didn't have an answer, just more silence. Luke stood up, pacing now. "I loved her. I love her. What the hell are we supposed to do with this?" It was the first time I'd seen him truly break. Not angry, not tough, just broken. Like a little boy who had been given a family and then had it ripped away the same day. "I'm not asking you to decide anything right now," I said. You deserve the truth." He stopped pacing and looked me dead in the eye. "So what now? You want us to get an annulment? Tell Ava? Destroy her world?" "I don't want anything," I said. "I just want to stop living in lies." He sat back down, quieter this time. "What if it's not true? What if we get a test and it's all just some cosmic coincidence?" "It's possible," I said. "But what if it's not?" He nodded slowly. "Then we lose everything." I didn't have the heart to say it, but yes. If it's true, we lose everything. We agreed to take a test, quietly, just us, before saying anything to Ava. In the days that followed, we avoided each other. Luke didn't come around. Carla kept the house quiet. I kept to myself, barely speaking, but I watched her. The way she moved around the kitchen slower than usual, the way she barely touched her food. The guilt was eating her alive. Carla watched me like a ghost for the next few days. She didn't ask where I went, didn't ask what I'd done. But she knew. Mothers know when something is moving in the air around their children. When the test results came back, it confirmed everything. Luke was my son. The boy who called me sir. The boy I had welcomed into my house. The boy I had grown to love. My son. And Ava, my sweet girl, was now unknowingly married to her half-brother. Luke came to the house, eyes hollow. He didn't cry, didn't speak, just handed me the paper, nodded, and left. Later that night, I told Carla we couldn't hide it anymore. We had to tell Ava. She deserved the truth, even if it shattered her. I dreaded that conversation more than anything I'd ever faced. But I knew, delaying it would only make it worse. She trusted us. She believed in the people who raised her. And now we were about to show her how flawed, how tragically human, we really were. We told Ava the next morning. Carla and I sat her down at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd done homework, where we blew out birthday candles, where she once cried after her first breakup. This time, she wasn't crying. Not yet. She looked at us, confused by the tension. "Is something wrong with Luke?" she asked. "He hasn't answered any of my messages since last night." I looked at Carla. She looked at me, and then I spoke. "Ava, there's something we need to tell you. Something we should have told you a long time ago. Something that's going to hurt." I watched her smile fade like a light bulb flickering out. She sat up straighter, her eyes shifting back and forth between us. "What is it?" My mouth was dry. My hands were shaking. But I told her everything. About Stephanie. About Luke's possible connection to me. About the pastor's whisper. About the test. About the result. At first, she didn't understand. Her brain rejected it. She kept asking, "What are you saying? What does that mean? What are you actually telling me?" And then it hit her. She stood up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. No, that's not real. That's not true." She was shaking, breathing fast, her hands over her mouth, like she could shove the truth back in. I reached for her. She pulled away like my touch burned. "You're saying I married my brother?" Her voice cracked on that last word. Carla broke down in tears. She kept saying, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But Ava couldn't hear her anymore. She stormed out of the kitchen, slammed the front door. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. I knew she needed space. But every second of silence after that felt like a punishment I'd earned 1,000 times over. The next few days were the worst of my life. Ava went to stay with a friend. Luke disappeared entirely. Carla couldn't stop crying, and I just went numb. We had destroyed everything, not through malice, not through violence, but through silence, through the belief that truth can be postponed without consequence. Eventually, Ava came back. She didn't say much, just grabbed a few things. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like I had failed her in the worst way. And maybe I had. Luke sent a letter, not to Ava, not to me, but to Carla. A short note. It said he loved Ava, that he always would, that he wasn't angry, but that he couldn't stay. He needed to go figure out who he really was, now that everything he believed about himself had been ripped away. Carla cried for hours after reading it. I didn't ask what else it said. I didn't need to. Her grief said enough. The house grew quieter with each passing day. Ava moved out a few weeks later. No drama, just distance. Luke, he never came back. Sometimes, I sit at that kitchen table, staring at the empty chairs, one for her, one for him, and I think about how one moment, one whisper, unraveled a lifetime of love. 1 second of truth destroyed years of silence. And yet, even now, I believe Ava deserved to know. Luke too. Because love, without truth, is just a beautiful lie waiting to collapse. It's been 6 months since that day. I don't hear from Luke. Ava only texts on holidays. Carla and I are existing, not together, not apart. Just two people orbiting the same house, haunted by the same silence. People always say the truth will set you free. But sometimes, the truth leaves you standing in a burning house with no way out. I think about that whisper every day. The way it cracked something open, not just in my family, but in me. It made me question who I am, what I've done, and whether silence is ever truly harmless. If you're still listening, maybe you're angry, maybe you're shocked, or maybe you see a part of yourself in this, a secret left too long in the dark, a truth waiting to be told. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: don't wait, because secrets don't stay buried. They wait, and when they rise, they don't knock. If this story moved you, or made you think, please consider subscribing to this channel, One Chair Empty. These aren't just stories, they're reminders of how fragile love and truth can be. Thank you for listening.